All right, back at it to bring you the best NFL player props for Week 10 of action. Now, last week, a solid week for me. Went 4-1, proved to 18-7 on the season, but no 5-0 week. You know we are looking for that. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to keep the people putting cash in their pockets in Week 10. We've been doing that, and this week, I'm going to return to some players that I focused on last week, as well as a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to start overseas with the Giants. They're going to battle the Panthers in Germany. Now, in Week 9, for my Giants prop, I took Malik Nabers over 6.5 receptions against the Commanders. In Week 10, Nabers' reception yards line is the same against the Panthers. Now, here's why I'm going back to Nabers this week. The last two Giants games, the rookie wideout finished with 7 catches against Pittsburgh and 9 against Washington. In each of those games, he was targeted at least 11 times. Now, this week, he's going up against the worst pass defense in the NFL. Carolina has given up 18 passing touchdowns and only recorded 3 interceptions this season. And the Panthers, they also are allowing a league-worst 7.5 net yards per pass attempt. So, my eyes, this is a perfect matchup for Nabers to crush his receptions line. Give me Nabers over 6.5 receptions against the Panthers. Next up, I'm going to back a quarterback who came through for me last week. His name is Patrick Mahomes. And the Chiefs QB, he gave me 2 touchdown passes, which I needed against the Bucks on Monday night. Now, against Tampa, he threw for 291 yards and 3 scores. But this week, I'm going to focus on his passing yards line because he's thrown for at least 245 yards in 4 of his last 5 games. The Chiefs, they're going up against the Broncos in Week 10. And last season, at home against Denver, he threw for 306 yards. Mahomes in Kansas City, this could be the time where they're getting on a roll as we move towards the end of the season. And I think the QB's recent good form will continue here against Denver, where his passing yards line is 231.5. I'm going to take Mahomes to go over that number here in Week 10. Now, the Jets, they're going to be out west this week as they face off with the Cardinals in Glendale, Arizona. And for my Jets player prop pick, I'm returning to a player that I selected back in Week 8. That's Breece Hall. Now, back in Week 8, I took Hall over 4.5 receptions against the Patriots, and he let me down. He did not get over that number. His line for receptions is the same against Arizona, and I'm fading him in Week 10. Now, my reasoning for this has to do with his involvement in the passing game. Following the team's acquisition of Davante Adams, the running back's involvement, well, it's gone down. Check it out. In his last 2 games, he's been targeted just 7 times and has finished with 4 or fewer receptions in 4 of his last 6 contests. Time to fade away, folks. I'm going with Hall under 3.5 receptions out in the desert. Okay, now we move over to arguably the most intriguing matchup of Week 10 as the Steelers visit the Commanders. And let's take a look at the rushing yards line for Pittsburgh running back Naji Harris. Now, Harris, he's been running the ball great as of late with 3 consecutive games over 100 yards rushing against the Raiders, Jets, and Giants. This week, he's going up against a Washington defense that isn't good at all, folks. The Commanders, their run D has allowed at least 164 rushing yards in their last 2 games. Yikes. Now, we know Pittsburgh OC Arthur Smith, he likes to run the ball. I see him leaning on Harris here, and I love the running back to go over his rushing yards line against Washington. Now, for my last prop, I'm going to give some love to a wide receiver who's returning from injury. That's Jawan Jennings of the Niners, who are visiting the Bucks on Sunday. Now, Jennings missed the last 2 games played by San Francisco, and he returns in a game where running back Christian McCaffrey is going to return to the field. Now, Tampa's defense, look, they're going to have to pay attention to run CMC along with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Niners QB Brock Purdy, we know he likes to spread the ball around, and Jennings should benefit from all those skill players being on the field at the same time. I think his receiving yards line just might be a little bit too low, so put it in the books here. Jawan Jennings over 40.5 receiving yards against Tampa. There you have it. Those are your picks for Week 10. Hoping to get to 5-0. I'm hoping for it. My director, Joe, says he's giving me the positive vibes, says it could happen. I think it will happen this week. As usual, people, enjoy the bets, but most importantly, enjoy the games.